Good morning. I'm Kathy Saunders. I was here in September with the dating scams, and Jen, my associate, I was going to say partner in crime, but we don't want to say that. I'm kind of a jokester. But anyway, so she's come with me. We were even at the Goodhue County Fair in August, and then we're supposed to be at Red Wing yesterday, where I live, for dating scams, and they got mixed up and didn't have it. We weren't told. I knew about it. Anyway, we got there and they forgot about putting it in the bulletin and everything. So we're going to do it in January. So sometimes things don't work out just right. Anyway, this subject is really hard for me. It was hard. I couldn't talk about it for about 20 years probably. And but it's something that's around, and even though we are in the senior section of life, there still can be something that you could do, or you could report if you would see something. I guess I'll sit down for a minute. A brief bio on me is I was born in Minneapolis. As a child, my dream was to be a nurse. And my dad said, "You're too dumb to be a nurse," when I was a teenager. So I did some cleaning of houses and was a nurse's aide for a while in Minneapolis to see if I really wanted to be a nurse, because that'll give you a good idea. And I still wanted to be one. And so I took my nurse's school at Swedish Hospital, Minneapolis, which is not there anymore. And am I talking loud enough? Okay. I was a nurse for 36 years, and I enjoyed all of it. Then when I retired from Woodbury Healthcare Center in 2003, Durcrest had just opened one of our care centers in Red Wing, and so I volunteered there, and I went in the memory care unit in the lower level, and there were days that it was kind of challenging, but I loved it. They're in their own little world, and we had sing-alongs, and we planted flowers, and it was, it was sad, but it was good. And they taught me some things too. I have 3 children. Dan's in Owatonna, Lori's in Burnsville, and Lisa is in Red Wing. She's a clerk at the post office. She's been there 28 years. Sorry. Thank you. I don't want to be too loud, but my kids used to think that I was too loud. My one daughter said, "Mom, when you get angry at us, I can see the veins in your neck, and I'm afraid you're going to get sick or have a heart attack." So I said, "Well, I'll try not to yell too much." But they turned out really good, so I guess I did something right. Anyway, if you've had a good childhood, it's wonderful, and you really, sometimes we take it for granted, but I happen to be, I say, on the wrong side of the tracks, but that's just to be funny, but I don't have all the answers for domestic or child abuse or sexual abuse or family violence, but unfortunately not a lot of people do. I have just one voice, but I will use that voice to speak for, especially for kids. They have no voice, and then even the teens, they have a voice, but a lot of times nobody will listen to them. Oh, well, he's just on drugs, or he's just lazy, or something like that. And the kids are still trying to find their way. And when you're in a home that is violent all the time, you feel safer at school than you do at home. I went to a Catholic school, all except for 1 year. And if somebody starts saying something about the nuns, of course, there's the joke about they're old and they're mean and stuff. They were good to us. I wanted to tell them so bad what was happening at home. I went to, I was having a lot of trouble with geometry and algebra. So one of the nuns said, if you come early in the morning, I will help you. So I was in her office and she was helping me and I just couldn't concentrate. And she said, you look pale today and your eyes are red. Don't you feel good? You can go home if you're sick. I said, no, I'll be all right. I said, I didn't sleep good last night. What happened was my father came up the stairs. We were just getting in bed and beat us. I can't remember, for some simple thing, whatever. And I almost told her, and I thought, but if I tell her, you know, they live a cloistered life. They don't see, and in those days, that was the 50s, everything was secret. So I thought if I told her, she would probably call my parents and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Kathleen tells me that blah, blah, blah. What do you think would have happened to me when I got home that night? So we had no shelters, no 911, nothing. And everything was secret. When my sister and I would go babysitting, this is in Iowa, we moved a lot because my father wasn't happy with his jobs, and I think he was probably let go a few times too because he didn't want to take orders. He, however, spent 3 years in the Navy, which I still can't believe. Then he was called back in during the Second World War for 10 months. He was on a destroyer. They shot the guns and the bombs and stuff. Because he wanted to be, if it wasn't his way, it was a highway. You know, everything. We couldn't ask him questions. We couldn't go to him for homework. Nothing. I mean, it was just, you know, whatever. So anyway, I want to be that voice. And you've heard of Hope Coalition in Red Wing. Before the COVID, we visited. I visited Goodhue and Cannon Falls. I had come with an advocate from the Kids Count, and I was on the board there for 2 3-year terms, and I helped name the Hope Coalition. We all talked about names, and that's what we came up with. And I visited a girl in Goodhue that was having trouble being at home, and so I visited her every 2 weeks in her study hall, and then I'd help her with her homework, and then we'd talk and stuff like that. But I think the awareness is better now, but I think people are afraid to get involved, and us, we don't really have the children, the little children, or the high school kids. However, we have nieces and nephews, grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren. I have 9 right now, so it's really fun. But of course, they're real little. But I think that we can still be aware. I was in Walmart about a year ago, and this little girl, she was probably 2 years old or so, and she was in the cart, and she was crying, and the mother was yelling at her. And then she threw something out of the cart, and the mother threw it, and it kind of hit her. It was a box or something. So I was quite close to her in the checkout, and my car happened to be parked close by too. So I acted like I just acted normal. And when I went to put my groceries in the car, then my eyes and ears were going, and nothing happened. It was fine. But if there was a situation, I think I would have probably called 911 or something. I wasn't getting involved, but I was trying to do something. And none of us want to be involved, especially if it's, somebody's got a gun or whatever. But we can be the person that is alert to a situation that perhaps isn't good. Now I will take some time to comment on being a survivor of family violence. I wish to add a side note regarding my own story. I really don't need any empathy or sympathy Just thank our Lord for somehow helping me and 4 siblings to survive. We had isolation, emotional stress, physical pain, anger, sadness, fear, and we had guilt. Somehow he made us think that we caused the situation, that we did something wrong. And they're really good at that. Our dad was an alcoholic and regularly abused his family. Interesting to note that our grandpa was also an alcoholic. His father abused his kids, my dad being one of his kids. It's quite interesting to tell that it seems common to see generation to generation of family violence. They follow their kids or their parents with unreasonable and cruel discipline accompanied by alcohol consumption, as each generation is taught unless the chain is broken. And these new sets of parents learn through regulated classes, new methods and safer solutions to teach and discipline the kids, plus learning to give them the gift of love in everything they do or say. In our family, I was second to the oldest of 5, 3 girls and then 2 boys, so we babysat the boys a lot. My mom was a kind, hard-working woman who had to tolerate living with a rude, impatient, and selfish, cruel husband and father. I don't have this in my notes, but she was so kind and just tolerated so much from him. And nowadays, the mother probably would have left the home with the children, but she had no career. She had no way of making money, so she had to stay with him. During our childhood and teen years, we moved often to various towns, mostly due to our dad's dislike of employment or his boss or both. One year we moved from Wisconsin to Iowa in February, in the dead of winter. We had no choice. My mother came to our bedroom with boxes and she said, "We're going to be moving in 2 weeks, so start packing." We couldn't say, "Oh, I don't want to leave my friends," anything like that. Just that's the way it was. We could never question or utter one word of objection to anything he decided to say or do. The fear we felt was almost overwhelming. We really thought he was going to kill us. Sometimes he would yell, "I'll thrash you within an inch of your life." And when you're 8, 9, 10, that inch, pretty small. That phrase sounds really horrible. When you are 7, 8, 9, okay, I got that in there. Supper time, unfortunately, was one of his favorite times to rant and rave. Of course, having alcohol on the way home from work really lit his fuse. It was usually something trivial. He happened to be ambidextrous, and so there's 3 of us, including me, of the kids that are left-handed, and sometimes we put the fork and the knife on the wrong side, so he would pick up on that. It was trivial. One evening at the supper table, I was about 15. He escalated into rage quickly and reached across the table and stabbed my thumb with a table fork. It was so painful, I believe I went into shock. We couldn't call a physician or go to the hospital because we all must keep the secrets. So, years later, my younger sister and I were discussing some things from our childhood. And anyway, I thought the thumb stabbing was done to her, and she said, no, this happened to you. I must have blocked it out of my mind as the trauma was there. Incidentally, my mom was abused by my dad also. Sometimes while we were at school, she wouldn't speak about it until later years. My last beating occurred when I was 19 and home on a long weekend break from nursing school in Minneapolis. The last evening I spent there, he came home late for dinner, also clearly intoxicated, and found fault with me. leading to kicks and punches, and next he pushed my head through a sheetrock wall. I don't remember much about it. Not one word from my mother, comfort, because we think she was afraid of him so much that she didn't want to help us, and he brainwashed her. Of course, she was afraid of my dad, as she comforted me in any way. The next morning, she drove me to the small train station a couple miles from our home, their home, to return to nursing school. She had tears in her eyes, but said very little. She gave me a banana and a candy bar to eat. Needless to say, I'd received a blackened eye, bruises, scrapes, a concussion, or worse. I'm sure it was concussion. I wanted to contact the local police near my school. However, I couldn't, as I was afraid that if the officers made check with my home, they were out on 65 near Bethel and Isandy, and contact police in their area, I was worried that the local police might check on him and his family at their home and possibly murder my mom and the 3 younger siblings in retaliation. My dad stored several guns on a gun rack in nearby laundry room, and that's what I was so worried about, off of the kitchen area. At nursing school, I wore a lot of makeup to cover the bruises, and I also suffered headaches for at least 2 weeks, but I couldn't tell anyone. Another huge secret. This was a very dark time for me. I had only 4 months left of my nursing school, and I prayed for hope and guidance. I needed to stay strong, as my nursing career was so important to me. I just knew that I didn't want to quit. I wanted to keep going. Let's skip ahead now. Dad passed away in April of '87 at the age of 74 as a result of esophageal cancer. And it was caused by drinking and smoking, but not all esophageal cancer is, but his was. My mom lived a number of peaceful years at a cozy apartment in St. Francis, Minnesota. Later, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and spent the last 8 years in a care center nearby her apartment. She was fairly close by. She passed at 92 years. She was buried at Fort Snelling next to my father in 2007. She was a kind mom, but I think she was brainwashed. We've come a long way in alerting and educating the public regarding abuse in the home by parents and guardians. However, we have many more miles to go, especially on any concrete solutions to this nationwide outbreak. And I want to say that I know the police and authorities and counselors do the best they can. But when things are hidden, like my father hid everything. Oh, he was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you ran out of gas or had a flat tire near their home in the country, he would be out there with a cup of coffee for you, change your tire, everything. But then he was this monster too. And he was a smart man, so it wasn't that he was illiterate or anything. It's astounding how much children pay the price with violence in the home. Abuse damages a child mentally and physically, whether they are a toddler, elementary age, or a teen. Their self-esteem can suffer deeply. Usually their grades drop. They can easily suffer emotional stress and other health issues for years, if not treated with professional counseling. Parents are not bad people. I emphasize that. They need to learn that they can discipline their children without becoming violent and possibly injuring the child or worse. There are various classes available to teach the adults new simple methods and solutions. Each one of my siblings and I came away from our childhood with emotional issues or baggage. My health problem was mainly clinical depression, which caused me to have a mental breakdown when I was 25 years old. I had several hospital stays, long-term therapy, and medication. And fortunately, in time, my depression was resolved. My psychologist noted while I was in treatment that I had apparently stuffed my emotions and stressful memories for so long, and finally my memory bank could no longer sustain them. So then I had a breakdown. The physicians remarked, if you could have shared these feelings and emotions with someone, example, a teacher, pastor, trusted friend, or relative, when you were a teen, more than likely you wouldn't have suffered this bout of depression. Here is a valuable lesson for teens and adults as well. Don't stuff those troubled feelings. Share with someone you can trust. You'll be wiser and more healthy in the long run. I realize it's difficult to relate events happening in your home or area of your town. That's why it's so vital to feel comfortable with someone you know and trust them with your info. Some of you may wonder why, in some respects, that I'm telling my story to seniors like me who really don't relate to my sad story. Well, I shouldn't say don't. They might have some things too. My reason to relate some of my situations is to help awareness for child and teen abuse. There's also domestic abuse. We know these things are happening and we never know what we may see or hear. So awareness is better than fear. I'm not trying to scare anyone, and I recall my grandparents mentioning about as kids and their dad taking them behind the barn for a spanking or worse. I remember hearing that. Those things were somehow tolerated back in the early days. My dad copied what his father did, and it was more than regular discipline. It was beatings, and we suffered pain and fear. Generally, those parents aren't, I must have repeated myself, aren't a bad person, but never learned the right way. And the family secrets. And like I said before, just be aware of something or someone that looks injured or scared, or if it's in your neighborhood, that's tough though. You can stay anonymous with the authorities. Each county has classes to teach parents the right way, the correct way to discipline. My motto is change the world of a child, and a child may change the world.